Thank you, guys. This is my first event where I'm talking about this book, so I'm going to try it out on you guys. Hopefully this goes okay. It's really interesting because I wrote this book about 22 years ago, and to have it come out again is scary. I don't reread my work. I mean, most writers don't. And so I hadn't read this book in like 22 years. And so I had to read, well, what the lovely thing that happened was after Dear Edward and Hello Beautiful, readers were emailing me and emailing my publisher saying, I can't find your first book, or if I can find it, it's on Amazon and it's about $77, and that's not very expensive, because it had fallen out of print about a decade ago. And so that was so nice. And then my publisher decided to reissue it. And I was really scared when I read it again that I was going to think it was terrible. And I read it like with all my defenses up, basically. Because part of the really interesting thing for me is that like we have all these different versions of ourselves. And who I was when I was in my late 20s is no longer who I am at 52. And I've had like 13 different permutations between then and now. And I wasn't sure. So it's not only like I'm reading work that I did when I was a less experienced writer, but I'm reading the work and like the heartbeat of myself when I was many iterations ago. And I was scared I wouldn't like her. So it seemed very fraught. And I liked it, thankfully. I mean, I actually, when I read it, I had all my defenses up, and for like the first 100 pages, it was like I was reading it like held out here, like ready to cringe. And when I finished it, I was like, okay, it's not bad. And then when the book came out this week, I guess, I downloaded the audiobook for it, which is performed by a whole bunch of different, very talented, voice actors, each playing a different character. And actually, when I drove to this event I did in Rhode Island yesterday, and then like about a half hour ago, I finished listening to it in my car. And this time I was actually moved because I think I had to do, like I let it in a certain amount the first time. And then it made it helpful actually that it was other people's voices in my head. But I was like, okay, I'm touched by this younger version of myself and the work that she did. And one of the things I think is interesting is it made me think, so I wrote this in my late 20s, and looking back, I think your 20s are really hard. Like for many people, I think for me, it was my hardest decade. And I think in part it's because you're like mashing buttons when you're in your 20s, trying to make yourself into the person that you think you want to be. And you're also not sure that who you think you want to be is who you should be. And you don't know how to get there, and you're not really sure about what lights you up yet. So you're just trying all these different things. And if you make a decision about yourself, like I had this decision that I made when I was in 4th grade that I wanted to be a writer. But in my 20s, I was failing, and I was like, should I be a writer? Like all this self-doubt and questioning. So there are 2 seminal events in my 20s. And when I look back now, I can see that that decade really shaped me.